So we both met doing a show and on the Lower East Side at the New Eureka Poets Cafe. Shout out to them, hey. But yeah, like we met doing a show in the New Eureka Poets Cafe. It was an interesting rendition of like Romeo and Juliet. And it was interesting in the fact that race relations were involved. And you can guess which side we were both on. But besides that, like during that show, like we just became fast friends, I think. Like you saw me and I saw you, and like we just started laughing.
I think the first day we started laughing and just kind of hung out. I think we had lunch together during our break,
totally.
and then 6 years later, we're still dealing with each other.
Still dealing with each other. I mean, to each other.
Have gone months, years.
Yeah, years even, without talking to each other, and then like just pick up right where we left off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love that about those kind of friendships, because it's like sometimes people are like petty. They'd be like, "Why haven't you called me? Why haven't you texted me?" Blah blah blah. And I'll just be like, "Look, I have a life and you have a life."
But that's how you know it's real.
But that's how you know it's real. Yeah. Like when you text them and you're like, "Hey, you know, I got a little free in my schedule. Like, you want to hang out a little bit?" And you're like, "Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we can hang out. Yeah." So, so yeah, like I feel like our relationship is like kind of like we'll pick up right where we left off, like no matter how much time has passed.
I think that's the bridge of like friendship to family, right?
Oh, totally.
Like family cannot see you except for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and you know it's perfect. And as much as we live right near each other and everything, we still see each other like maybe every couple months.
Every couple months, yeah, we do.
But one of the great things about that rendition was its representation and its inclusion, and the opportunity to tell a Shakespeare play, which is often very heavily white.
Yeah.
And be able to include all these different cultures and races and kind of tell the narrative through that lens. Yeah. And that's kind of something we want to talk about tonight, is how the media has started growing and including different races as well as different sexual orientations, and kind of what that means to be myself, member of the LGBT community. I identify as bisexual and Latino, and to be able to kind of and be able to kind of be an actor in this industry, and to know the responsibilities that come with that, and to kind of be shifting through what that is like as a member of both those communities. And I'm sure...
I mean, as a straight person, but also as an artist, I have been exposed to environments where, like, I am open to whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I am, my best friends are like this. Like, we are all, like, a part of the same kind of community, and that kind of aspect, the artist community, like, we hang out with each other all the time. We are basically family. So for me to kind of enter in kind of like, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a complete outsider, but I would say that I am adjacent.
Honorary member, though.
So. No, well, honorary. I would say I'm more like an adjacent honorary member.
But listen, you can teach me about the history for sure.
Oh, look here. Okay, so in true, like, ally mentality, because I know I can't label myself as an ally, but somebody else can. But in true like ally mentality, I feel like I need to know everything there is to know about the people that I care about. And if their sexual orientation is important to them, then I need to know everything there is to know about that. And that includes the historical aspect as well, because along with being an artist, I'm also an educator. So I really pride myself on researching and being a student of life and learning about the people that I care about.
So, kind of question for you, in your development of your understanding of the LGBT community, what is one of the first shows that you've seen that you kind of identified and you're like, oh, okay, this is an example of someone who is lesbian, gay, straight, trans, whatever?
Oh my God. Okay. So my father really, really loved those old movies. And I think the first exposure that I got to the idea of just sexual fluidity in and of itself was Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe.
Which, who can complain about that?
I mean, who? Okay, look here.
Some do like
I
it
may
hot.
be straight, but Marilyn Monroe was bae, okay? Period.
Baby.
But yeah, it kind of opened my eyes. Like, wow, there is a possibility of somebody being freely themselves, and also experimenting with gender norms and their sexual identity as well. Thanks, producer. But yeah, I was exposed to that kind of thing like very early on in age, but I grew up in a very strict Christian household, so whenever that topic was brought up and was introduced, it was kind of like pushed to the side, and I wasn't necessarily allowed to explore that part of like my learning period of time, like
more an
my formative
understanding
years.
of the art of it,
Yeah.
like the art of drag almost, but
Yeah.
not the art of, or not the actualization of. There are people that are
Yeah, that are
non-binary. There are
actually
people
this
that
way,
are
that are human
on that span.
and that are this way. So
Wonderful.
it was kind of like a sort of like an introduction through a caricature of that kind of that community.
I love that, and we see that so much more mainstream now with
Oh,
like
yeah.
RuPaul's Drag Race and
Oh,
Dragula,
definitely.
and even internationally with Drag UK and
Oh, yeah.
Drag Canada, and like drag has become such this widespread art form, and through those shows, we're finding out that like there are many drag queens that identify as women. Many drag queens right now on this season of Drag Race. There's
We're the
Gottmik, who
Femmes.
we
We love
love
the Femmes.
Gottmik.
And we love
And
them.
Gottmik is a trans man who also does drag, and kind of what that means. And it's really opening the conversation, which I love that we've started from Some Like It Hot to where it was kind of the butt of a joke to now where it's humanizing
Yes.
people finding their expression and their freedom to express through this beautiful art form.
Yes. And not just there, Oh God. Speaking of gay icons, Lady Gaga. Love her. Anyway, but I feel you on that. I mean, and I feel like the media now is kind of like opening its eyes, kind of the way they have with like people of color, how like human we are, even though, people of color and also members of the LGBTQ community are, I guess, different from what society deems as the norm. They are finally being recognized and seen and heard and humanized. Like, it is such a relief to know that, I can see that I can see the people I care about on screen now. Like, I'd be like, oh my God, that is so something Cammerron would do. Or, oh my God, that is something like so-and-so would totally do. Oh my goodness. And like it's represented on screen and it's done in real form.
Well, we were talking earlier today about Orange is the New Black.
Oh,
and,
yes, Orange is the New Black. I love that show.
The different representations within that show, and you had the honor of being on set for that.
Yes, I was.
As one of the background.
Yes.
And just being able to see the many deep facets and the layering of the characters through that show, for me, was one of the most heart-wrenching and beautiful storytelling of the LGBT community, where it had, a lot of different, more adult themes.
Oh, yeah.
However, you did not once focus on the sexuality as much as you focused on the people.
Yes.
And where we've come from to where we are now, where that is the key of the storytelling, is it's not, oh, they're lesbian, oh, they're bi, oh, they're gay,
And that's like
oh,
the
they're
whole story.
whatever. And that's the only focus of the story. It's look at these beautiful women stuck in prison that,
Yes.
had these hard lives and these hard backgrounds and are kicking addiction and kicking this and
forming
finding
a
solitude
community.
with,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful, and we love the wonderful actors in that show that were able to do that. And I think
Natasha Leon. Hi.
Danielle Brooks,
Danielle. Hi.
just being
Who's
able-
Duba? Hi.
just being able to really show that, like, at the root of all of it, right? Doesn't matter if you're gay, pan, trans, straight, a hippo, whatever.
Yeah.
At the end of it, people are people.
Yes.
And at the heart of it, these stories that we are telling in the media now are about that, about the heart of humanity, and about, like, I don't know where that accent came from. Heart of Humanity. And
Thank
about really being able to tell those stories. Call Me By Your Name is one of the
I
first
love
ones
that.
I can think of.
Yes.
Where it wasn't about two gay men as much as it was about two people finding their way through the everyday struggles of everyday people.
Yeah.
Because that's really what we all are.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, I want to talk about another piece of media that sparked a whole lot of controversy on Disney Plus. There was this new short that came out that was called Out, ironically, and it was about a young man who was struggling with coming out to his parents. But he had a beautiful, fulfilling relationship with a beautiful boyfriend and a dog. Like, he had everything, and he didn't want to share that joy with his parents because of, I don't know, fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, or what have you. And I guess he had to see his love through his dog's eyes, who did not care about gender. Dogs do not really care about gender or sexuality or the stigmas that come along with it. So he had to see it, the love that they had through his dog eyes, for him to appreciate it and be like, look, my parents.
This is something to
This is
share.
something
It's
to
something to be
share.
valued. Yeah. And I love that it is so focused. I think the big controversy is, is homosexuality something too sinful to have children acknowledge and too sinful to have children understand? And that's the big controversy is Disney Plus, is that actually a streaming service for kids? And if
That's a
it
great
is a
question.
streaming service for kids, if we are saying that it is, then is it appropriate to talk about non-traditional family values on a streaming service?
Well,
Where
yeah, that's a good question.
one thing that you and I both discussed when we both watched it this weekend was, you know what? It's not even
Like,
about that.
it's not
There's
even about
nothing
that.
about the
Like,
intricacies of an intimate relationship with two
with
men.
another
It's
man.
about the love and the genuine
Yeah.
joy that these two people feel together,
Yes.
and their ability to really hone in on who they are with their partner and what
Yeah.
that looks like. And I
Yeah.
think that is so beautiful and
Yeah.
so well done.
It was so well
on-
done and beautifully animated, by the way. Props to the
on
animators.
such a sensitive subject that for me, I went, why wouldn't I want my kids or want kids to know that if you identify as gay, lesbian, what have you, and you find love with someone that is of your same gender,
Well-
why wouldn't you want to feel safe to share that with those that you love?
Well, I can't help but think about the conservatives because I grew up around them. I grew up around people who did not look at the LGBTQ community as favorable. They saw homosexuality as a sin, period, point blank, period. And they will reference that same old Leviticus scripture, man shall not lay down with man as they lay down with beasts, and so forth. However, you know, as somebody who is an educator and as somebody who has educated children as early as a fresh newborn, I can seriously sit here and tell you that children are absolute sponges. They will absorb whatever you give them. And depending on what kind of parent you are and what kind of parent that you want to be, you expose your children to certain things. And if you are the kind of parent that does not agree with the LGBTQ community, of course you would raise up in arms. And of course you would say, oh, my child has no business watching this. But then when the child grows up, they'll start resenting you because there are people out there like that. And then they will carry this kind of like judgment about LGBTQ people, and they'll carry it on to the next generation. So the question then is, as a parent, do you want to carry on that prejudgment about LGBTQ people? Do you want to carry on that legacy of being like the kind of person that that looks at somebody, thinks one way about them, and automatically writes them off?
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, that's the long and short of it.
I think for me, it's a matter of like, yes, I completely hear that and understand that. You know, I grew up in a Baptist home. I was Mormon myself for a while, and even graduated from BYU and really held on to those values for a while before I came to terms with who I was, and seeing the effects of believing that it was only appropriate to be one way. Fine. Everyone's entitled to their own beliefs, and I think that's part of the beauty of the country we live in,
Right.
is that people can have their own beliefs and they
Right.
can differ. However, it needs to be done in a way in which, in my opinion, a way in which no child feels afraid of who they are. Right? You can have these instructions to your kids, and you can have these open conversations, and you can say, you know, through the beliefs of X, Y, and Z, we believe these things.
Right.
Without your child feeling like they have no hope,
Right.
they have no future, and they have no place.
Unless they are this certain way.
And at the end of the day, we live in a world now where no one really fits a label or a category
Not
or a
one.
box fully.
No.
You may be aspects here and there, but at the end of the day, to try and shape the children who are our future and say, you must follow this line exactly, or else you will not end up with your family if you believe in eternal
Right.
families. You will burn
In purgatory,
you know,
or
or hell or whatever.
Yeah.
You put all these negative things on them. How are they supposed to grow into the most successful, most loving, most human part of society that you would dream of your child becoming, regardless of any label of which they pick up?
Yeah.
You know, I think at the end of the day, we need to allow children at a certain age
Yeah.
to decide the path that they're going to walk.
Especially.
And I don't believe, personally, that Disney Plus is the same as Disney Kids.
Yeah.
Disney Kids is a streaming service for
It's a
kids.
different.
Disney Plus
Yeah.
is Disney and Disney-related
Exactly.
media forms and productions
Exactly.
to come together on one platform.
Yeah.
If you want to sit here and talk about, oh, it's a sin to be gay or to show homosexuality, okay, fine. Let's take off Hamilton. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
Hamilton is a beautiful musical,
Oh, yeah.
so well done.
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Adultery,
Awesome.
murder, teaching your child about murder. Like,
And also LGBTQ undertones. I see you, John Lorenz. Okay. Don't get me started. I could talk about history all day.
and so, you know, if we're going to really censor based off, don't show anything sinful on
Right.
a children's streaming service, why are we okay with shows like that? Because at the end of the day,
Okay.
at the
In
end
front of our children. We play that in front of our children. Children are playing this.
I was gonna say my brother and I played that.
Okay.
You know, I think at the end of the day, we need to really streamline. If we are gonna die on that hill, then that hill can't be secluded to one place.
Exactly.
Hills come in groups.
Yes.
You know, there's many of these things. So I think we really do need to say, okay, if we are claiming this as a child streaming service,
Yeah.
then you shouldn't need parental controls
Controls
on there
at all.
because everything on there is for kids.
Oh, awesome.
But Disney Plus has those in there.
Oh,
Why?
they do.
Because it's not a streaming service for
Just
kids.
for children. No, it's not.
It's a streaming service with options for children, like
Yes.
Netflix.
And I want to bring up the point that some people may say that, oh, okay, well, it's an animation. There are plenty of
So
adult
is Big
animation.
Mouth.
So is Big Mouth. So is Bob's Burgers. There are plenty of The Simpsons. There are plenty of adult animation things out there that are just for adults, that are also animation, that may look kid-friendly, but that are for adults
Yep.
who may not want to grow up, myself included, okay?
I think it's the word Disney. That's what it is. The word Disney
yeah.
represents kids. So maybe they changed Disney Plus to something different. Maybe.
But the Disney brand is so powerful.
I know, that's
they
the problem.
own everything, including your soul.
And while I love Disney,
Yeah.
Disney has never been exclusively for kids.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I know that especially since they picked up Marvel, I'm sure that there have been like other instances where Disney has produced content that's not specific for kids. I mean, we can look it up later, but you know, the Disney name has evolved so much because they've begun to own so many things. They own Marvel now. They own the Discovery Channel. They own Lucasfilm Unlimited. They own the whole Star Wars franchise. They own not only kids programming anymore. So for somebody to say, oh, well, because it's Disney and because it's animation, it's for children, you know, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Completely.
And so I think, first of all, we have to determine what kind of streaming service it is. And at the end of the day, it's not just for kids.
Not
It's
at all.
So the argument of, I don't want my children exposed to that, that's fine. Go in your parental controls and say, not this show.
Yes.
You have the prerogative to do that. But that's your decision.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Let's not
I think the plus says it all.
Plus. Yes.
Exactly.
You are correct.
So let's not take away the opportunity to introduce other ways of living and other options for people who may not fit the norm.
Yeah.
Let's allow that outlet to be out there for someone. Because I know for me, as a person who grew up in a very religious household and then converted to a more religious religion to kind of, you know, rebel against my family, and then finally came into owning who I was. It wasn't until I saw a show called Bear, which we actually ended up doing a production of later, where the lead character is always played gay, but loves this beautiful boy named Peter and loves this beautiful girl named Ivy and has relationships with both of them. Then I went, maybe bisexuality is a thing. Maybe there are people like me that exist, and maybe I don't have to choose to fit into one box or the other.
Yeah.
It's so confusing growing up knowing that you enjoy intimacy with women, knowing that you like women, but also knowing that there's men that catch your eye, and it being like, okay, no, I'm straight, I'm straight, I'm straight, I'm straight, I'm straight. Because forcing yourself to fit into a box causes yourself to hate part of yourself.
Oh, definitely.
And it wasn't until I really owned that that other struggles that I had became less significant. I ended up not struggling with other temptations and other hardships and other ways to cope because I finally was able to say, oh, this is okay.
Right.
I deserve goodness. I deserve love. I deserve happiness.
You are human.
And you met me kind of through that transition.
I did. So, okay, so we're going to go a little bit back into how we met. So one of the very deep conversations that we had, and I don't know if you remember this, Cammerron.
Probably not. I'm scared.
No. I'm not gonna air your dirty laundry, not yet. But yeah, one of the things that we definitely talked about was, you know, identity and sexuality and how important that is to a human being, and how. Oh yes, we're gonna switch out mics real quick. Thank you so much. Check one. Can you hear me? I can hear myself now. Great. Okay. But yeah, so yeah. Like we were talking about how important sexuality and identity was. And you were telling me that you were kind of struggling with your identity a little bit. And I didn't necessarily know what that meant yet. But like, I think by the end of the production, I felt like I got a deeper understanding as to who you were as a human, which is why I was like, okay, I need to be friends with this person.
I don't remember this at all, but I'm sure
it was a moment. I swear, we were at the bar, New Eureka Poets Cafe, and we, the bar was closed, but I think we. Not to out ourselves, but I think we were drinking a little bit. But yeah, like we were talking about how important like identity was, and how like, because we were talking about race relations at first. I think because that was the theme of the play, but then somehow or another we kind of geared ourselves towards sexuality. And you told me that you were like thinking about like you were questioning at that time. And I was like, oh, wow, that's wonderful. I was like, I was so happy for you, the naive girl that I was. I was like, oh, that's so happy for you. I bet you feel so great right now. And you were like, actually, I feel like shit. Oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, I don't feel great at all. I'm really sorry, live viewers. But yeah, thanks. Thanks for laughing that off. But yeah, like actually, no, I feel terrible right now. And I'm like, I don't understand why. Like, you're being who you are. You're being yourself. And you're like, actually, no, this is a struggle for me. like I feel like I'm not going to the good place. I feel like I'm going to the bad place. And like I feel all these things within me, and at the same time, you're also going through a painful breakup. And you were like very raw and open and honest with me, and I appreciated you for that.
Yeah, because it is hard. It's hard. I think, you know, I can't imagine the experience of being gay because I don't identify that. I can't say what that's like specifically. But for me, as someone who identified with an attraction to both the male and the female gender and body and all of that, I really felt like I had a choice. And like I was wrong for making the choice to embrace both sides. And yet, part of my relationship that we talked about where it had ended, I think like a year prior to that,
yeah,
but it was still
raw for you.
Was I never felt like I gave an opportunity for her to love me and for me to love her fully, because I could not allow myself to say, hey, just so you know, this is part of me. And I think in a lot of ways, I robbed her that opportunity to fully get to know me, who I happen to think is quite great. But now, but the I robbed her that opportunity, and I robbed me of that opportunity. And now in relationships, when I've started going on dates with people, whether they're men or women, it really doesn't matter because I love me now. And I can own my imperfections as well as my perfections.
Yes.
And I see that me, who I am, is not an imperfection.
No, it's not.
And that was the big thing where I felt like because I had this other side of me, that was imperfect.
Right.
I was never going to be worthy of a full love. I had to open myself to both, because how could a woman ever love me? Then as I started going through, I think I had started seeing a guy during that show.
You did.
And I broke it off because I went, how could a guy ever love me when I'm also attracted to women?
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been a really difficult thing, you know, as someone who went through that process, to be like, wait, I'm not imperfect.
Yeah.
Who I am is perfect. I may not do perfect things.
Right.
But who I am is not imperfect.
Yes.
And that is such a beautiful thing to know. And I think that's what out tells us.
Oh, definitely.
Out tells us that we are worthy of our family's love.
Yes.
We are worthy of whoever we choose to love us back.
Yes.
And we deserve to have that kind of full love in our life. And that message, that's appropriate for straight,
anyone,
for gay,
anyone,
for whoever.
Yeah.
Every child deserves to know that they are worthy of love for exactly who they are. And that's why I'm an advocate of this show, being on a music platform like that, and why I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it deserves all of that. It deserves all of that, for sure. So I wanted to talk also a little bit about a little bit of history. I wanted to bring up, especially because it's Black History Month, I wanted to bring up somebody who's very, very important. Yes, it's Black History Month, yay. But I wanted to bring up somebody who's very important in the LGBTQ community that I came across not too long ago. Her name is Marsha P. Johnson. She was a trans woman, a freedom fighter, a civil rights leader, and an LGBTQ activist, and also a sex worker, and also a community organizer. She did everything. She literally had Christopher Street in the palm of her hand.
Before you go into that really fast, if you guys want to hear a little more conversations about the trans community, or you want to guest on this show from the trans community, and you want to kind of hear, we talked a little bit about drag, and you want to hear the difference between what drag is and what that art form is, and what it means to identify as a transgender person in today's world, put it in the comments or give us a call. Let us know. I would love to discuss that further.
Yes,
and
why not?
We know so many beautiful people in both those communities, the drag community and the transgender community. We would love to share them with you and introduce you to them as well.
Yeah, totally.
But Marsha P. Johnson.
Yes. Oh. There goes the mic again. But yeah, Marsha P. Johnson, she was originally born a man, but she became Marsha P. Johnson um, through her own self-realization and through the encouragement of her friends and her community, which is why, again, I stress the importance of community, like why that's so important. And because of that, she was a key figure in the Stonewall riots. And she just, she broke down barriers and literally broke windows and, fought police, hand-to-hand combat. And she cared so much about the rights and freedoms of humans that she fought on to foster her community up until the day of her mysterious death. And
how sad is that too? That
it's very
was
sad.
it was at a point where that seemed to be the only option was these riots.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes we think riots and we think, oh, that's terrible, how could they do that? But I think it only happens when no one's listening.
Oh, yeah.
It only happens when we're not willing to have a conversation. It only happens when words are said to deaf ears.
Yeah.
And no one's sitting back and saying, I hear you, I see you, I understand. Let's figure out how to make a difference. I think that relates a lot to today with the BLM movement.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
with all of that. It's not a matter of, oh, all these people are acting up, even at the Capitol.
Even that.
I don't think that riot would have happened if people felt heard with actual facts and were given this opportunity to hear both sides of the equation. And I think we need to remember that when violence comes into play, it's because someone feels unheard. And I think instead of saying, yes, this is terrible, while I don't, me personally, don't condone violence.
I don't agree with that at all.
I don't condone destruction of property. I don't condone any of that. I think we also need to take a step back and say, why did Marsha P. Johnson feel it was time for her to lead this movement and to say, yes, I stand up with you in these riots. I stand up in this action because someone has to stand up. And I think it took that to be heard. Yeah. And how sad is it that we, as a society, refuse to listen until that happened?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, personally, I can't necessarily tie what Marsha P. Johnson did to the Capitol riots. Personally, that's my opinion. But what I can say is that, like you said, when people resort to violence, it's normally because, like you said, they feel unheard and feel unseen, and they feel like the system is unfair. And in Marsha P. Johnson's case, she felt it from both sides. She felt it both as a person of color and as a trans person. So she knew what injustice felt like. She knew what civil unrest felt like. She knew what it was like to wake up every day and be fearful of your life because of who you are.
And I think people forget, even today, there's a reason to be fearful as a member of the LGBT community or as a person of color. I think, I can't speak for someone who appears as a person of color, because I do have a privilege of passing for a white person, and that does come with privilege. But I can say there are many cities, many neighborhoods in which my partner and I don't feel comfortable holding hands out of fear that we will be the next target of a hate crime.
Oh, that's
because we do not live in a society, even in even in New York City, as liberal and loving as it is, there are neighborhoods where we just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be safe, unfortunately, to be who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and even though it's unfortunate, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, there's hope, because there are still people who are out there who are fighting every single day. They wake up every morning and they post something new on Instagram, or they go out and they reach out to members of their community, or they organize petitions or lobbies to local politicians, and they do all of this activism work like 24/7 nonstop. And it's not just, older people who are doing it. It is the young people. It is honestly people who are younger than us.
I was going to say, a lot of times, most of the people I see in the marches, on social media, being active, being amazing examples of what an activist is. Are people younger than me?
Yeah.
Are
Our
the
age or
youth.
younger.
I think about so many people that are examples to me. They're not my age.
No,
They're
they're
older
not.
than me.
No, they're not.
Younger than me.
But they're teaching me things. Look here. They're teaching me things. And again, I'm going to go back to how we teach our children. How do we teach our children? Do we teach them to be open and accepting of all humans no matter where they come from? Even though if you don't disagree with them, you still see them as human beings and you don't treat them less than, even though they look different from you or sound different from you or believe different from you. I think this generation and younger is making progress in terms of that. Like, they're able to see humans for who they are, and because of that, they're able to fight for them.
Yeah. And you've been talking a lot about teaching our children, educating our children, and how we teach them. What is, for you, like the most inspirational lesson that Marsha P. Johnson has taught us?
Man.
I think there's so much we can learn from history, and if we're not learning from history, then that's
What
on
are we
us.
doing here?
That's on us.
What are we doing?
So what is kind of one of your
man.
biggest takeaways from her example?
Oh man, her resilience. No matter what came across her way, she never gave up. And I want to highly suggest to our viewers to watch, if you have Netflix, to watch the Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. It is on Netflix. It is a documentary where a trans freedom fighter, her name is Victoria Cruz, she goes out and she actively investigates the death of Marsha P. Johnson, from talking to NYPD to talking with her friends to asking around Christopher Street, do you remember Marsha? What kind of person was she? But her resilience at the end of the day, because no matter what, no matter who kicked her down, no matter who discouraged her from going out, no matter who threatened her life was threatened on more than one occasion, okay? You're doing something right in activism when somebody is threatening your life because they know that your message is too powerful to silence without killing you. But Marsha P. Johnson always put the people first. She always made sure that everybody was good. She even formed a house called Star House, where she took in young, vulnerable, transgendered LGBTQ people who have been displaced from their homes because their parents had kicked them out. Or their family had disowned them, and she took them in and she made them her babies, and she was their mother. And that's where all those terms come from. You had to create a family for yourself when your own family kicked you out.
And you've touched on so many amazing things right
Oh,
there
yeah.
that I kind of want to nail home a little more. Is for one, resilience. Life is hard.
Life is hard,
even
isn't it?
today as a person of color and a person of the LGBT community.
Yes.
But life is not impossible. Hard does not equal impossible.
Oh, yes.
And while I come from a very conservative home, you came from a very conservative home, and while there are several people in my family and other people I know have similar experiences where you may not feel comfortable telling your family, you may not feel comfortable letting them in on that beautiful part of who you are, that is okay.
Yeah.
That is completely okay. But no, you are not alone. Know that there is a community out there ready to stand by you and help you through the hard times.
It's true.
We talked about this at the very beginning. Rebekah has become family to me. And that and that means so much to know that in the hardest of times, I have someone right there ready to pick me up to tell me it's going to get better.
Period.
And it does.
It does.
And I think that that's so beautiful that you've talked about family and you've talked about community and you've talked about educating and teaching. And I think when we find that community and we allow people into our hearts as family and we choose that family, we have an obligation then to teach.
Yes.
We have an obligation then to spread the message and to say, listen, I see you're struggling.
Yeah,
Let's
let
spread
me help you
positivity.
out.
Let's spread love, let's spread light, and let's be that community for someone else.
Yes. Yes. Snaps for that. Snaps for that. Yes. Love it. Yes. I sound effect. We should do more of those. But yeah, like, okay. So I also want to talk about how. Oh, we have 10 minutes. Okay. So the last thing that I kind of wanted to speak on was just allyship, what that means. Because again, like I said, I am not going to label myself as an ally. I believe that allyship. Okay. I believe that allyship is earned. It is not bestowed upon yourself. I believe that allyship is earned. And it's not just from the LGBTQ community, it's all communities who have been disenfranchised and who have ever been made to feel less than. So I wanted to clarify that. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about allyship, what you believe that means, and like how you think, allies can help to further the cause of the LGBTQ community in terms of acceptance.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I think that for me, it starts at the most basic level, right? You can be an ally just by being there, just by being a ear, being a shoulder to cry, being a presence that someone can feel safe with. That alone is like the base level of being an ally. That first conversation, the fact that I felt like I could open up to you, you were being an ally in that moment. Whether or not you ever went to a pride march, whether or not you ever fought for LGBT rights, whether or not you voted, to have equal marriage be a thing, and whether or not you did anything else, in that moment, you were an ally for me. However, it doesn't stop there. It hasn't stopped there. You continue to be that support for me and for many people in this community. You continue to educate yourself, to learn how and why people believe on both sides of the aisle what they believe.
Yeah.
You continue to say, okay, these are examples of disenfranchisement. These are examples of how, even though we are living in a more equal world, how the scales still don't balance.
They don't.
And why they don't balance. And you continue to educate people on what they can do, including myself. We've talked about several shows that have really inspired you and taught you a lot about the community.
Oh, yes. Pose being one. Hey, cast of Pose. I see you. Hey.
And you've helped me to be able to learn more about the background of my community and the culture and the history and where my community came from to where my community is now. And being a partner in that journey is being an ally.
Okay.
Being a protection in that journey is being an ally. Having conversations with people that disagree is an ally as much as having conversations with people that agree. And both conversations need to happen.
Period.
I think no person knows everything.
Right.
And I know, I've said this at the beginning of our talk today, and I've said it before in the past, I'm so proud to be a member of the LGBT community.
Of course.
However, not every letter in the LGBTQIA+ community is visible.
Not at all.
And it is our responsibility as allies and members of the community to bring that visibility to light. And I'm so grateful that we have this platform, so grateful you guys have joined us today
LDM.
to have this conversation with us. Because while we were sitting here and having our little party and hanging out, real nice to be social during this pandemic.
Oh, yeah, man. I miss people so much.
We have an opportunity to share with you a little about our experience on both sides of being an ally and being a member of the LGBT community. We are so excited to continue these conversations with you. If there's any topic you're interested in, anything you want us to learn a little more about and share with you, any certain kinds of guests you want to see, let us know. We are so excited to continue the conversation and keep this party going.
Yes. And if you ever want to follow us, you can follow us on the LDM network with Out in the Open podcast. That is the name of our podcast. You can also follow us on our social media. My social media is Miss Rebekah D, REBEKAH DEE.
And mine is Cammerron B. difficult to spell, so I'll spell it for you. Cammerronb. So yeah, Cammerron with 2 M's and 2 R's, B.
Yeah. So shoot us a DM if you want more topics like this on the next podcast. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you soon.